What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we are providing you a state of the market and stock picks for June 7th, 2022. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, consider subscribing, as I do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and the week ahead. And considering that this market is very lovely this year, you might want to consider subscribing because it is mass chaos. So being said, um, today, right, the past couple days have been a pure chop. There is no real catalyst to send us up. There is no real catalyst to send us down. But one thing is for certain, we are flirting with a 20 EMA, and it's something that I really do not like. Now, if you want to look at the technicals, I've talked about this before about how when you retest a 20 EMA, typically, especially with higher time frames, you will have a bit of a gap. You won't exactly touch it right on. These EMAs aren't exactly spot on. These EMAs aren't exactly spot on when you start looking at the higher time frames, and so they don't exactly touch. They can touch, but majority of the time they do not. Being said, we didn't touch quite here when we sold off here. We had a catalyst to pull us back down as well on that same day, and now we've been floating right on it. We essentially spent all last month trying to recover. Again, all last month we flirted with a 75-point basis move. That's why we touched around 38.10. Then they said, no, it's just a 50-point basis move. So now this is essentially what the 50-point basis move is floating around. We do have the Fed next week. That is ultimately what the market is waiting for. We do have core CPI on Friday. That core CPI is debatable in my mind. It could sway the market pretty heavy, especially if the market doesn't move all week. It very well could wait until Friday. I don't believe that's going to be the case. I believe we're going to get some movement one way or the other sometime this week. But as you can see, we are wedging. Now, this is on the daily. It doesn't look like much of a wedge, but if you drop down to the hourly, we're wedging pretty hard. And what I want to see tomorrow is where we land. Do we land below this? If we land below this, in my mind, this wedge really isn't going to matter. There's a lot of really heavy resistance and support right here. So it more likely is just going to continue to chop. But if we do break below the 40.75 tomorrow, again, I think we could start revisiting some lows. Again, we're going to need a catalyst. Again, pop above it. Do I really see us break in 41.87? Could be a strong possibility. Again, no news is good news at this point. We've had so much bad news that no news is a positive sign. The market might take that and then start to, like I've always said, might start going up as designed to and go from that point. Again, it is always 50-50. It doesn't matter which analysis you listen to, even if it's me, it's always going to be a 50-50 chance. I try to be as neutral as possible when coming up with my theories. I base my theories off of events that are up and coming and what I'm seeing in the charts, and particularly the price action in the charts tells you a lot. It tells you where the buyers are, it tells you where the sellers are. Again, why a big reason why I'm a big supporter of the supply and demand zones, because I feel that is the only thing that has worked. And then events ultimately overrule that, but they still always land in supply demand zones. For the most part, just being patient and let that event play out, and then seeing what the next closest supply and demand zone is from that point to take position. So even though it does seem that easy, and it can be that easy, it's still not always that easy. There's all types of things that come into play. That's where we have risk management. Nonetheless, we are in this tight wedge, in this very tight spot. I'm really hoping we get out of here before next week, next Wednesday, before we get that meeting. But the way things are going, we have to see. So again, I really want to break out of this. Either one, the 40.89, or I want to break above the 41.77, and then take a position from that point. I think if you really play anything in between here, you want it to either be really at the breaking point with a really tight stop below, or right at the top, either going down or up with a tight stop. So you can play both sides either way, but as long as wait till it plays that side. Don't play this middle area. This middle area is really chopping, especially if you're in options. It is just chopping and burning money is what it's doing at this point. And I think it's very well what the plan is, right? The market plan is to just sit and wait. We have to figure out what the Fed is doing. Are they going to start becoming hawkish? and start going more than 50 points, what is the case? Again, Canada just announced, I think that's the big thing too, is just Canada announced the fact that they did a 50-point basis move, and we're talking about another 100-point basis move on top of the 50. So if that's the case, we could correct more on top of what we already have. Again, always keep in mind that 38.10 is that 75-point basis move. So if it's 75 points, we could potentially head down this way, or if it's a 100-point basis move, we could potentially head down even lower, tack on another 5% onto that low right there. And then that's pretty much where we could potentially be landing. Again, this is all just my thesis to this point. So again, tomorrow, it really depends where we land on watching this wedge. We'll obviously break out of this wedge by the morning. Pre-market, we'll want to see if we're up or down on the top of this wedge and see where we go from there. Bitcoin is actually holding very well, back to 31. I love seeing this. I really think this is the base here that we've been consolidating around. Yes, it's been fluctuating pretty heavily around this area, but I do really like the fact that it's holding around the 3140, 31K mark roughly. Between the 31 and 29, 28. It's been jumping back and forth, but it's been sitting nicely supporting there. Again, there's a lot of underlying things going on behind the scenes as far as crypto is concerned. Facebook went to Bitcoin, right? Because their experiment with their own cryptocurrency didn't go through, so they're relying on Bitcoin. You have Chipotle accepting crypto. You have a bunch of underlying brands that are coming into the NFT space that are doing all these other different things that you need to understand. It's going to take them to slowly boil the water to cook the frog, right? And it goes with that saying that to cook a frog, you have to slowly raise the temperature of the water. And that's what we're seeing in crypto. And that's why you're starting to get normalization in crypto, because of the fact that it's the slowly underlying infrastructure is being put in place to slowly raise that temperature of that water. And that's what we are seeing. So if you are in the crypto space, you are still very early, but just be aware that it's going to, by the time it actually hits, it's going to seem like it's overnight for a lot of people. Just be mindful of that. Anything in the crypto space, 1 week seems like, or a month seems like a light year in crypto space. So it can move very fast. So being said, again, do like where crypto is. Going into tomorrow, again, it's going to be the same game plan pretty much. Let's go ahead and throw up the banks first. The banks are an interesting spot. Like I said, they've ran up quite a bit, and they have just held around here, JPM, leading the pack, kind of leading this rally back up from where we were. We really need this to hold. Now we need to look at the daily here, and we're currently holding, we're all holding support here. We really don't want this to break below the 128. If JPM does break, which, in my mind, you don't want a parabolic move. It's looked like it's waiting to roll over. I talk about rolling over is sometimes you get these massive parabolic moves. So, there's a couple day runs, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm expecting a pullback, and then so many times you're going to get this chop, and either it's going to pop or it's going to pull back. So more than likely, I think we're going to get a pullback to this lower level, possibly 123. You don't see a crash, but even the general index needs a pullback. Like I've always said, when you push and break resistance, you need to have a pullback and retest, or else that current push, that parabolic push, will essentially almost flash crash right back down. So you want retesting that builds strength and momentum to the upside. If it does that, it's also in turn does the same to the downside as well, right? You don't want to just flush. We've had a lot of flushing this year and hardly any pops, so just be aware of that. Goldman Sachs, again, we had same thing, had break. It did play out this pattern. It didn't completely sell off. It sold off quite a bit. Now we're just in a holding pattern, Goldman Sachs. So again, some of these are really interesting. Like the pattern isn't like fully playing out. Normally you get a bigger retracement, but we got a little bit of a retracement there. This is kind of concerning here. Bank of America. This one has probably been one of the weaker banks, and it looks like it wants to break. If this breaks back below this 36, so really keep this in mind tomorrow. If this breaks back below this, you could potentially start seeing back down to 33. Again, if the banks start giving out, that's a telltale sign the rest of the infrastructure of the market will start coming down. I don't really see a crash. It could potentially happen. You can't say it can't ever happen because it can, right? And even as much stability and growth in the market that we're seeing, that's kind of holding the market up, which is good to see. Good to see that people are starting to buy again, and that we're not just not bouncing and just continuing to sell. That is definitely a good sign. But again, I don't think the selling might be done. Again, we need to pull back. I think it's important. Leading up until next week, I think is more likely going to happen. I think we start seeing selling going into that just in preparation. It's just, when does that happen? Do we get a small rally before then, or do we just sell off? And again, banks are key for that. BA is good to use for value, to watch for value plays and see how they're doing. Got a nice break and retest of the 20 here on the daily, so value might actually start pushing. Could get a nice push up out of that wedge for the index. If the banks start falling, you want to make sure value and tech is holding. More than likely, you're going to need both interest rates to push if the banks start falling out. You just need banks to hold. They don't have to push. They don't have to sell, as long as they just hold. Is really what we were looking for in the banks. BA, again, looks decent. Then you're looking at tech. Apple's has had the dev conference, so they've been releasing a lot of information out there. It's kind of just it's obliterating some of these smaller companies out there, and also helping some other companies. But Tesla, is really pinned here. It doesn't want to sell below the 700. If we do sell below the 700, I think it's a straight shot down to 660. At that point, I'm kind of really looking for that pullback. I don't see us going lower than that. Again, we could revisit the 625, maybe a brief visit to 600. But if we break the 600 rate, we could potentially head all the way down to 500. Strong possibility. We're still in this channel. We tried to break out, but obviously did not happen. So I'm watching that, obviously, Tesla going forward. Amazon, interesting spot. Again, parabolic move. Had a lot of news, a catalyst to push us up here. Got rejected. Obviously, his first attempt to try to break the 126. Again, stock split today. It's 20-to-1 stock split. That's why Amazon is at 124. But what we're watching here tomorrow is that if we break back below the 120, again, you can get a clear shot down to 115, and then some of these other levels, 110, and the 100, about 103 mark. That's kind of what you're looking at. So again, if it does break the 120, I could get a massive flush straight down to that from there. So I want to watch Amazon on that. AMD, really interesting spot here. I thought it would have broke out today, but we started selling back off. Chips had a lot of strength. Something to watch tomorrow. If this can hold, this could be actually a good short if the market starts to really start selling. So you're really kind of watching the break here at the 104 mark. If we break below this or open below this and you see the candle, you're going to probably get a little push after the break to retest that trend, and then you should get a heavy flush after that. Again, you got strong footing at 100. So, but again, when you're looking at some of these lower cap stocks, those 5-point moves are quite a bit percentage wise. So nonetheless, I want to keep that on watch as well. And then that is pretty much it. I mean, Google, we can take a look at Google real quick. Google is getting rejected again. First retest of the 50, hard rejection. This didn't quite make it to the 50. So again, we could, to be honest, again, just want to reiterate, we could really see chop for a whole week and a half until we get answers from the Fed. We really want to see if what the Fed is doing is making things better or worse. That's ultimately what we're trying to gauge at this point. With their 50-point basis moves that they're going to keep coming in with, are they actually helping, or are they making things worse? Everything in the world is going bad, right? To just do the bare minimum of living and existing is getting extremely expensive. So being said, we have to see how this thing plays out. But Google, again, another key one to watch, and it's barely holding here. So if it does break the 276, could see a heavy flush here as well. They do have July 15th. There is their split, so you'll have the split too. So this will look like Amazon at 100 here pretty soon. And again, the reason for the splits or to fight against essentially any kind of recession period. Is why they're doing these splits. That's why you're seeing all these different splits going on at one time. Tesla did it earlier or later in the back half of last year, or maybe it was this time last year. I can't remember with Tesla, but they did their split. So we have to watch, we have to see, and then go from that point. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a like button. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.